7:30. Before we get going, I want to put in some few rules here. But first of all, I see Councilor Hogan there, see Councilor Green. Who else am I? Okay. I see Councilor Driscoll. Who else am I not seeing, Amanda? Is there any other councilors here? So anyhow, I see that we have 3 councilors plus myself. Chief Buckner, thank you. Before that, I have a couple of rules I want to put down here, Chief. The first one is we want to make sure that any member of the public that is attending, that this is councilors meeting. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of time for public to say a few things. If anyone wanna from the public want to say something after, I want to leave 10 minutes at the end of the meeting to allow the public to chime in, at least 5 people, 2 minutes each. And that should be it.
Do you mind if I keep the clock and cut them off at 2 minutes?
And I want to see if, I've never done this before, but I want to see if there's a way we can see who's from the public want to comment. Councilor Driscoll, any idea how we can see them?
What we could say is that they were there's a chat function on the WebEx link if they want to message Jim Conroy. His email is jconroy@syrgov.net, or they can hop into the chat on the WebEx to let us know they'd be interested in speaking, and then Jim can, or whoever's on, I don't know if Amanda or Jim is running.
Yes.
I'm here. Yeah, you can. Okay. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak should use the chat function to speak to Amanda, and then she can make us aware at the end if that works, Counselor.
Okay, Amanda, would you want to keep track of that, please?
Counselor, I'm on the meeting. They can just hit the chat button for me. I'm
okay. Excellent. Excellent.
The email probably wouldn't be a good idea because I can't see that at the same
Right.
time I'm looking for the chat button. So just tell them to hit the chat button, send me a private message if they want to speak.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jim. And then another one is if, like, I have a couple of questions here. If any of the counselors have more than one question, ask your question and allow other counselors to ask their question before you go into your second one. Just to give everybody a chance to ask questions before we move on. All right. Without anything else, counselors, anything you want to add before Chief Buckner take the floor? All right, Chief, take it away.
Sir, we had some areas that you had primarily dealing with training areas that I believe that you had some concerns and questions about. So we have Lieutenant Shulsky, who's the training division commander, who can give you kind of a highlight of some of the main areas I believe in which you had an interest. And then we will open it up to questions that you or the other counselors may have after that.
That will work.
Okay. Lieutenant Shulsky, you ready?
I am, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, counselors. I'm Lieutenant Julie Shulsky. I'm the training coordinator for the police department. I'm just going to go over some information on the police academy as well as our field training program. And I set up a couple Excel spreadsheets with some information for you. I'll try to share that now. Not real good with this stuff, so give me a second. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'll begin with the police academy because, as you know, a police officer's career begins in the police academy. In New York State, the Department of Criminal Justice Services sets the curriculum for all police academies across the state. Currently, DCJS mandates 699 hours of academy training, and 160 of those hours are for field training. So essentially, that amounts to approximately 12 weeks of academy training and 4 weeks of field training that's mandated by the state. Our police academy is currently 28 weeks long, and we provide 1,012 hours of training on the topics that are mandated by DCJS. On the spreadsheet here, it's a breakdown of what's mandated by DCJS and what we're actually currently doing. I'll just go over a few of those things right now, so you guys can read it, and I can provide you a copy if you'd like. For ethics and professionalism, we are mandated 8 hours of training, and we're currently doing 12 and a half. For physical fitness and wellness, we're mandated to do 65 hours, and we're well over 100 for that. In procedural justice, they mandate 2 hours. We're currently doing 4. In penal law, we are mandated 16 hours, and we're currently doing 46 hours of training for that. For use of force and deadly physical force, they mandate 11. We're doing 18 hours. For report writing, they mandate 7, and we're doing almost 40 hours of report writing. I'll scroll down here so you can see some more of them. For defensive tactics, emergency medical services, and emergency vehicle operations and firearms training, for each of those, we're almost doubling what they're actually mandating us to do. And for decision-making skills, they mandate 8 hours of training. We're currently doing 15. The nature and control of civil disorder, they're mandating 3 hours of training, and we currently do 10. Those aren't all the ones that we're exceeding the training mandates for, but that's just a brief overview. Like I said, you can read through this. In addition to exceeding the mandates, our academy also has elective blocks of instruction, which include bringing in community members from different organizations in the city, such as Barra House, McMahon Ryan Center, Catholic Charities, Helio Health, Interfaith Works, and the Spanish Action League. On top of that, we've also incorporated an online learning platform into our last 2 police academies. This platform allows for further training discussions between the recruits and instructors on various topics. Instructors are able to post different resources, training videos, podcasts, that sort of thing that can help supplement what the recruits are learning in the classroom. We've gotten some great feedback from the recruits, and we found that this online platform paired with adult-based learning techniques that we're using have really helped our recruits retain information and material that they're learning during the academy. So once the recruits complete the academy, they then transition to our field training program. I also have a spreadsheet on that as well. As I stated before, DCJS only mandates 160 hours of field training, which is approximately 4 weeks. Our field training program is a minimum of 11 weeks of training. And we require significantly more time than what's mandated by the state because this allows for a longer evaluation period and a larger data set to evaluate an officer's conduct and capabilities. I've put together the document here. As you can see, it shows the mandated hours and then what we're actually doing here, which is over 400 hours of training. And these standardized performance areas are mandates by DCJS that are things that we need to cover during field training, which are like community interaction, apprehension, intervention, vehicle operations, police interactions and notifications, police ethics, integrity, officer safety. You can read through all of those, but from the information I provided here, you can see we far exceed the minimum training standards set forth by the state, both in the academy and our FTO program. The department realizes that training is a crucial aspect of law enforcement, and proper training helps to keep our community and our officers safe. Does anybody have any questions regarding the academy or our FTO program?
I have one, Counselor, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So my question is, what's the metrics we use to determine whether or not this is effective? I guess how do we, whether through qualitative or quantitative data, figure out whether or not we're doing a good job training?
I don't know if we have any qualitative data, but I would say just the performance of our officers on the streets and the success that we're seeing in our officers. I would say that proves that we're doing something right. And on top of that, we also are one of the leading examples of a police academy in the state. People look to us to help guide them when they're either putting on their own academies or they're looking to implement training in their area as well.
Julie, could you, Councilman Green, I don't know if we understood your question correctly. Are you specifically talking about the field training portion of that, or the academy portion on what we're measuring to whether or not the training has been effective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire program, right? So,
Right.
Obviously we're exceeding the number of hours we need to do, and I think that's great. But, when we compare our academy to Rochester's, to Buffalo's, to anyone else, what's our goal of how we're going to say, hey, we did a really exceptional good job training? How do we know we did a good job?
Well, I think part of that is the measure of your ability of a retention standpoint in the form of the test that they are taking at the completion of each of the blocks to measure many of those blocks. And then the other component from an application standpoint, so when you have 28 weeks of classroom and practical exercises and things of that nature during the 28 weeks, the 11-week academy is for the application of that. So to be able to take that and translate that into the real world, all of which is measured. Is it ADOR, name of our program, Julie, that we use as the evaluating portion of that? Is that the name of it, ADOR?
We currently use ADOR. We're transitioning to the Lepta systems here soon.
Which is kind of a performance evaluation forms that we use to show as to whether or not the recruit is able to adequately apply these things that they've learned in the appropriate times and places.
Correct. And the Lepta systems also has statistical analysis that we can run. So it's superior to the ADOR system that we're using now. I think that'll help us give some of the answers that they're looking for as well.
Lieutenant Schulze, this is Mark. Do you mind if I jump on here for 1 second too?
Sure.
So, and just to go down, if you could go back to the previous Excel spreadsheet where you showed the actual academy breakdown, Counselor. If you look towards the bottom for the reality-based training section, that's a new component, and that question that you asked is a question that trainers around New York State have been asking for a long time: is how do we know the juice is worth the squeeze? We're doing all this extra hours. Is it actually translating to increased performance on the road? And how do we measure that? That's one of the areas where we're investing a lot more time and resources in developing reality-based training. We're actually we're training our officers, our current officers, to be instructors and then coaches and then observers to give real-time feedback to officers prior to actually exiting the academy and going to field training. And that's really the area where we try to see the most improvement. Now, it's not a lot of quantitative improvement. It's more qualitative in nature. But that's really where one of the significant improvement areas that we've seen, and we're actually trying to measure improvement for all of these additional times, because we can focus on de-escalation skills, or we can focus on specific types of incidents that an officer would respond to. The other thing too, and it's a little bit different than what your question was, but I think it's important, is that one of the nice things about the Lepta system, as opposed to the ADOR system, is that the Lepta systems allows us to evaluate the actual field training officers to make sure that the feedback that they're giving to the actual recruits is consistent and is meeting the department's standards as we set them. So it gives the ability to look at actual data, not only for the officer, but then the actual trainer who is doing the training.
So just to stay, and I guess this is my question, and I'll wait until later. Just to follow up on Councilor Green question on and staying on performance. Now, generally, as there have been a survey or some kind of performance review or survey from the community that the police ever received, the department ever received? Just to see where you are with your training and your performance at all. Anything.
I can jump
Mark,
in
are you
if
currently
you'd like.
aware of that?
Someone said they had the question about the survey.
Yes, I can jump in. This is Deputy Chief Trudell. So in the past, we have done a citizen satisfaction survey with the Finn Institute. And we are currently going through the process of just finishing up a second citizen satisfaction survey relative to just what you're talking about, a survey. Maybe not necessarily to exact training performance, but overall satisfaction with the police department and how that service was provided.
And what was that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What was that? What was the result of that survey?
I can definitely get you the results from the earlier one and the most recent one. But
Okay.
overall, I want to say it was about a 75 to 80% satisfaction. And there's a lot more components to that, counselor.
If you can just maybe I don't know how the survey was framed, but if you can just give us the synapse of the survey part that focused on especially on things like communication, stuff like that, the actual performance, the interaction of officers, stuff like that. Was there a specific part like that?
Exactly what you're saying, I don't think so. But certainly we weren't prepared, or I certainly wasn't prepared to talk about the citizen satisfaction survey, so I can't give you the exacts.
I mean,
Certainly something that.
The reason I ask that, I'm sorry, the reason that is that satisfaction will mirror the training. That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly why I mentioned it, because that's the way we feel as well, right?
Yes.
We're gauging what the citizen on the street feels with the performance of the police department.
Okay. All right.
The two studies are, the one study's done, the other study is just about to be completed, and we can provide that, the whole thing, so you understand the survey questions, all of that stuff.
Okay.
I just don't have that information. To answer your question, the answer is yes, we've done a couple.
Okay.
And to further that, it would take you getting copies of it.
Okay, excellent. If you can just get that to us, that would be great.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. That was that. Any follow-up question to this topic, counselors, before the for the chief and his team move forward?
Yeah, Counselor, one quick one, if that's okay.
Okay. Is there any other counselor though want to follow up with that within that area before you go back in, Counselor Green?
I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. What about Counselor Hogan? You okay, Counselor?
I'll listen to Councilor Green first,
All
and I might have something after.
I'm fine
Okay,
with Green
Councilor
asking
Green, go ahead.
questions too.
Go ahead, sir.
So my question is just, how do we evolve training over time? I mean, so even just going back over the last 6 months, I would imagine the officers that are going to be new officers are going to face new challenges that older officers haven't, right? So as we learn new information, as we learn deficiencies in the department, do we have a process that allows for the training to evolve and for the hours to change, for new topics to change?
Well, in addition to having our own training academy, we are state accredited. So the standards by which that we're judged from the DCJS standpoint to make sure that we are in line with what the state requires. We're also in the process to where we hired a new person that's actually on this call, I believe, with Jesse Cassis to pursue a national accreditation. And that organization is called CALIA. The difference between the two is that the state standards, I think they're roughly 100, Jesse, you can help me with this, 100 or so that are required from the state standpoint, where there's 500 or so from the national accreditation. And the accreditation that we're going to pursue from the national standpoint is for both the department and the training academy. So those will be two other independent verifications or reviews by which that we will be putting ourselves under to ensure that we are reflective of industry standards and what subject matter experts say is best practices.
Chief, speaking of best practices, I mean, do you assess programs like or departments in other states? I'm thinking particularly like Philadelphia or Camden, New Jersey, or places like that where they've had some success as far as with community policing. I'm just wondering, do cast a wide scope and maybe looking to incorporate some of those practices into your training with the new officers?
Well, one of the things that I don't see on here that's certainly a part that we do with our recruit classes is that they have community projects that they do. For example, one of the classes that I'm very familiar with that had a project to where we did the adopt a spot within the city to where they were going out and doing that campaign. And I know that there's also an area where we did some cleanup. It was either around a community center or something in the neighborhood. So it's a part of their community initiative. That's one of the things that each class has in place from a tangible standpoint that they do that. Community policing in general by our organization is defined by 3 pillars: partnerships, problem solving, and prevention. So they get a countless number of examples of doing those kinds of things to show that, so that we can show that we are demonstrating community policing.
Well, could you name a few of those partnerships, Chief?
Well, we have partnerships with the school system, for example, with our churches. We have partnerships with the media. We have partnerships with the Common Council. We have Neighborhood Watch. We have TNT. We have organizations that help us with back to school programs. There are like for today in our staff meeting, there's going to be 4 pools that are open, and then we're going to provide ice cream to the kids. And I believe we have some ice cream companies that agreed to help us donate to the kids to encourage good behavior at the pools. We're going to give them free ice cream, and we have a private sector partner that's going to help with that. So those are just some of the examples. We can get you a list of things, but I would tell you from a consistency standpoint, follow your Syracuse Police Department online through our social media platforms, and we post all of those different things that we do in and around our community.
Councilors, any more question while we are still staying on this topic?
Counselor, if we could circle back to that evolving training. In addition to the police academy, we also have yearly in-service training, and I believe Sergeant Russell was going to touch upon that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so this quick spreadsheet is just touches base on the things that we've covered over the last several years, and then the 2020 is pending. But what mandates training in essentially continuing education training is not the state. It's through the accreditation program that Chief Buckner just talked about. So if you're not an accredited agency, you don't have to choose to do continuing education training. So the department engages in this continuing education training to go over these things. But this is really more of the brick and mortar classroom type training. I mean, there is also a component where you might be out on the range, or you might be doing some practical application. But there's other areas in terms of how we actually train different components of the police department. So what I mean by that, so we have the system Power DMS, which is it's an online platform that can send a training bulletin or a training message out to the workforce if we need to get something out very, very quickly. And so COVID was a perfect example of that. When an executive order came out and we needed to do a rapid deployment of a training message, we would use the Power DMS platform to get this out to the workforce. And then we have the ability to run an audit report and make sure that people have signed for those things. But then we also do roll call trainings where a supervisor will be tasked with doing a short, brief message, 15 to 30 minutes on some kind of topic. Again, if it's something that is something we're hearing or we're seeing, or we think we need to do a refresher on something, or we haven't touched base on something in a while, a supervisor will take that task and then do the training. So there's a lot of different areas for continuing education training within the police department. The most formal of that is what you're seeing on the screen right now.
Councilors, follow-up questions? Okay, so talking about yearly training, is there something specifically beside what I see here? There's something specifically yearly that is dedicated to officers beside the leadership part of the department.
Councilman Jones, I don't understand your question.
So what I'm asking is so I see here supervisor skill training, executive leadership, and dealing with a person in crisis. I'm asking, is there a specific training that is done yearly by officers that is not leadership?
The in-service that you see here is what the organization goes through. So in 2018, there were 24 hours that we're giving. 2019, we got it up to 32 hours. 2020, we had it planned for 40. With COVID, obviously that will be impacted because for part of the year when we were social distancing and having officers work in modified work time, that's going to impact the number of hours that we will be able to complete by the end of the year. The goal is to, going forward, that everyone in the organization, chief's office included, will have an annual 40 hours of in-service training each year, which is the continuing education. There will be in the future different tracks depending upon what level you are. For example, the chief's office may get 24 of the hours that the rank and file get, but we'll have 16 officers that are specifically for command level training. So you'll see some of that separated out. Same thing for first line supervisors and management with sergeants. We may have something different for those two groups to make sure that we are addressing the areas to which they actually have responsibilities for.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you were saying that for example, a once sworn officer would have 40 hours of training a year.
Yes, sir.
In service.
Yes.
Okay. Break that down for me, Chief. What would that look like?
So for 2020, go to the far right of your screen.
Mm-hmm.
The 40 hours would have included firearms training, legal updates, use of force, deadly force, emergency vehicle operations, cultural competency, cyber security, physical fitness, less lethal training, and rescue task force training. Had we had an opportunity to complete our full contingency this year for in-service training for the year of 2020, the 40 hours would have included those blocks of instruction.
Okay.
So for example, the cultural competency, I believe for the first year, was it 3 hours, Julie, for the first year?
I believe it was 2 hours the first year and 3 hours the second year.
Right. So that for that block for cultural competency would have been 2 hours for this individual that we're going to have a contract with to come in and teach that block.
Okay. Counselors? I guess my question would be, what's the difference between cultural competency and cultural diversity? Are they the same thing?
I think that there are some things that are interwoven there that may be interchangeable, but cultural competency, there are 4 pillars that Dr. Strauss uses that I don't have the 4 pillars in front of me, but it's basically part of his training is first getting us to be able to honestly and openly evaluate how we view things and then how that impacts our behavior. With the goal in mind is to always recognize some of the things that we come to the table with for a variety of different reasons, whether it be your family, whether it be religion, whether it be your environment, whether it be your education level. We all make decisions based upon certain things. Once we have the cultural competency that we can make better decisions to override some of these things that may be negatively impacting our views, but that we don't want to translate into our decision making.
Oh, okay. So you said Dr. Strauss is the facilitator, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. How much of the community, especially when this training is happening, how much of the community within the city, community folks are involved in this process, or is it strictly Dr. Strauss and the PD?
Dr. Strauss is not a part of the PD. He's a contractor out of the city of Denver, Colorado. And I know that there are some people that may help that are outside the police department, but they're usually law enforcement family people, meaning from maybe other agencies that help us put on some of our in-service training. But I'm not aware of any of these blocks that I would anticipate that are community folks that come in to provide some of the training. We do have several community organizations that are a part of our training academy curriculum, to what she spoke about with those auxiliary groups that we have to come in and talk to you about Alzheimer's, or talk to you about those who have autism and how to respond to someone who's deaf and hard of hearing. In those regards, there are community people, community organizations, nonprofits who tell us about their footprint in the city and where we intersect as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Counselors, anything?
So Chief, this in-service training, so I might have missed something here. So this is something that's done every single year to all the police officers, or is this part of the academy?
In-service training is continuing education. 28 weeks of training academy, 11 weeks of FTO is what you take to become a Syracuse police officer. Once you've completed those 2 phases of initial training academy, then field training portion, you become a full-blown solo riding police officer. Officers who are already in the organization, in 2018, they had 24 hours of continuing education training for the blocks that you see. We increased it in 2019 to 32 hours. The goal was in 2020 to go to 40. So every year we have continuing education, some of which may be state mandated hours. They may have 16 hours that are mandated by the state. And then some of the other blocks of what we do as an organization that we feel are necessary given the challenges that we face. Because as you could probably imagine, what the state offers is a very generic kind of form that would probably suit any environment. But what they do in Camillus is certainly going to be different from what we face here in Syracuse, which is why some of the things that we have are going to be unique to our department.
So this is a progression, and you're in an effort to be adaptive to everything that might be happening on the streets of the city of Syracuse. In other words, I can see
it's an attempt at doing that. There are still things that may come up that were not necessarily covered by your in-service training, but we try to make sure that our officers holistically are prepared to deal with the challenges of the world.
Well, you can see by the progression, it's obviously a pretty significant effort on your part. So I congratulate you on that. That's all I got, Counselor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Hogan. Now, anybody else, counselors? All right, Chief, let's continue.
What do we have next on the list, Joe or Julie?
I think it might be wellness, health and wellness.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to try and hold on. Let me try to share this application that we're purchasing. It will be going into effect. Well, we're going to have it. We can purchase it in our new budget year. It's called the Cortico Shield app. It'll be coming up here in a minute, I think. Uh-oh. Okay, one second. I shared the wrong thing. I don't see it. Okay, so I'll just explain it. So it's a wellness app. It's called a Cortico Shield. It's a health and wellness app that goes on the officers' phones. It incorporates all in one place, right on a phone, peer support, chaplains, therapists, self-assessments, and a whole array of things. Everything from if an officer is going through financial problems to having a stressful day or coming off a hot call where they need to find some place and look for an item on the app that shows them some breathing techniques that can bring them down from a high level. This Cortico app is being purchased all over the country right now. It has experts already loaded into it from all types of fields. Again, therapists, experts on breathing techniques and yoga and things that everyone goes through, but basically for stressful situations that officers are going through. And I'm going to still try to bring this app up while I'm speaking. So I can't even go over all the things that this has in it. It costs $35,000. It's completely customized. You can customize it to each department, meaning we can add our own peer support people on there, our own chaplains, doctors from the area that can treat officers that are going through all kinds of stuff, whether it's family issues, again, stress, PTSD. They'll be on there so they can access them right from their phone. It also has the ability for the chief to push out messages to the troops anytime he wants, whether something big has been happening in the city, something he needs to be aware of, or some message that he wants to deliver to them. And again, it will all be on their phone. I know one of the requests from many of the protesters is this app is one way to reach out to the officers. I also want to mention that it's one of the important aspects of this app is that even though we purchase it for the officers, it is free to the spouses of the officers so that they can learn, read up on things that officers go through throughout his or her day. So when they walk through the door and they see some type of thing occurring with the officer, that they can maybe speak to them with a more intelligent level because they've read something on this app talking about the lifestyle of the officer and things that they go through. And again, let me just, 1 second, let me just see if I can bring this thing up here. I had it right here and I don't know where it went. But it does show a tremendous amount of things that you can access from this app. I don't know. It's just not showing up on my computer, folks. I apologize.
Yeah, we can't see it either, Joe.
What's that?
I said we can't see it either.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's on my computer and it should be simple to share, but it's just not doing it. And I don't know what I want to do though, since I can't share it. Let me just read a few of there's an entire page of things that are preloaded onto this app. So I'm just going to read some of the important things. There's alcohol abuse, anger management, anxiety, panic, worry. These are not just categories of things I'm reading. Inside each one of these categories, if they tap on them, are going to be to overcome these, and they're coming from experts. Again, experts in this field around. There's PTSD, as I mentioned. There's wellness self-assessment tools on there. There's psychological first aid, they call it. Physical fitness, parenting tips, financial stuff. It's all in one spot on the person's phone, the officer's phone. So it's just obviously very accessible to them anytime while they're working or when they get off duty.
So consider that the app is monitoring and recording all of this. Is there any Oh, we see it
Oh,
here.
there we go.
Yeah, there it is now. So, yeah, so goes on the phone. You can customize it to have whatever you want on the front of the phone. And again, it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's anonymous, so we don't know if the officers are accessing it. We want them to be able to we want them to get better. We don't necessarily want to be checking on them all the time. But this is the page that I was talking about. If you look at this, all this stuff is preloaded in here, and it's on their phone as soon as we pick off this app.
Okay, so a supervisor is able to when for example like emotional health, depression, stuff like that, compassion fatigue, when it's a supervisor able to see all of that and be able to bring them to a higher attention, or is it just sub-report?
No, well, first of all, Counselor, this would be on the app of every officer out there. Everyone from officer right up to captain. It would be on their phone. So let me just give you an actual example. Say the officer just comes off of a call where, God forbid, there's been a child, it's either a dead child or a child that's injured. It's a very traumatic thing, especially if that officer has children of their own. So they can go to one of the places in this area and find a specific, and again, it's not just the title they're going into. Once they hit on the title, they're going to find pages and pages of information, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's a therapist that they need to get a hold of right away, things that they can do to overcome that rather traumatic call that they just went on. So they're not just building up trauma inside their heads and going from that's what leads to PTSD.
Okay. Well, before any other counselors say anything, I just want to say I like this, Chief, because often as a community, as much as we take so much from our officers, we want to be able to make sure that they are staying healthy. So this is good. Counselors, anyone want to go and ask a question or?
Chief, do we know can we tell how many officers avail themselves of this?
Yes, Counselor, that's the one
not
thing.
personally or who they are, but just by the number of times they hit like one of these subjects.
Yes, that's the one piece of data that is tracked, Counselor. Obviously, if you're going to buy something, you want to know if it's being used. So that is the one piece of data that they do capture, is how many people are using it, so that we can see whether or not it's a success based on the use.
So this hasn't been put in place yet?
No, we haven't in our next budget year, so we haven't been able to purchase it until July 1st.
Okay.
I would like to really see how this work, Chief. So if you can keep us posted on it, that would be really great.
Absolutely.
Chief, speaking about their health, as far as monitoring, I know this has come up in all the years I've been on the council, but monitoring the physical health and the mental health, as far as like working all these extensive hours that sometimes come up for the police, especially in light of what's happening here in Syracuse now and COVID and all that. So we're still, as far as monitoring that, pretty much. There's a limit, of course, on how many overtime hours an officer can work, correct?
Yeah. So the answer to your question is yes. And there's constant monitoring going on at all times at every level. So the officer comes in to a roll, or if they work in CID, SID, they're being monitored by a sergeant who's being monitored by a lieutenant, who's being monitored by a captain. So they're watching them all day long to make sure they're not being overcome by all these things, as you mentioned, that are going on around them, and also that they're not working too many hours to add to the stress. So we are constantly looking at the officers to make sure they're doing okay.
And of course, logistically, with the new procedures, electronically keeping the time, you have the ability to say, hey, you can't take that shift because you're already over the amount of hours you're supposed to work this week, or not?
Well, we will have that option. Kronos got put in the parking lot for a little while because of COVID. That's the timekeeping. Right. Software. It's now back on the table. I believe they're hiring a manager for it to start working on implementing it. But that is the program that will allow us to do just that. In fact, it has a program in there that if you've worked too many hours, you won't even get you won't even have the ability to sign up for anything, meaning the alert for an overtime job won't even go out to you. So it has a lot of parameters that you can set in there, but we don't have that yet.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
Okay, I guess we are coming down to the mark of 1 hour. Is there something you want to add, Chief Cecil or Chief Buckner?
No, sir. I think we're ready to take questions from your community folks that you had asked for in the beginning.
Okay, I think Jim, do we have questions coming from the community?
Yes, Peter McCarthy wants to speak, and there's also the question that went out to everyone. I think everyone can see it, asking if the citizen satisfaction survey can be written in conjunction with members of the community to assure the right questions are being asked. So that goes back to the Finn Institute, and if the members of the community are being advised of their questions, I guess that's for the chief.
Is that something we can do, Chief, to allow our community to have a part that they can play on the survey questions?
Are they willing to help pay for it?
Well, if they're citizens of the city of
Yeah, they
Syracuse,
pay for all of
would
our
pay
stuff.
for it.
So no, I guess the Finn Institute would have to answer that question, because if it's going to be, certainly you want it to be independent of the police department who's being evaluated. But I would think that the Finn Institute would have parameters, or I guess, or maybe take suggestions or a process by which they could get the concerns of the community to ensure that the things that are near and dear to them that are being appropriately addressed. But I don't know if we're the right persons to do that, because we're the persons being evaluated. But so I guess that we would have to ask the Finn Institute, how do you make this more of it sounds like more of an inclusive process to where the community feels like that the right things are being addressed.
Yes. So is that possible? Can we set up a way where Finn and our community folks maybe a couple of our community folks can also be a part of that?
We can. Rich has been in contact with them the most. I guess we can see where they are with the most recent survey to see if that's possible with them. We only have a set budget amount for them, so we certainly don't want to go back, and if they're telling us it's going to cost more money or something, we certainly would not be in a position to do that.
Could you
Just to
find
answer
out?
yeah, so I can answer that question quick. So the two surveys are done. And the questions that they came up with are, if you're familiar with surveys, I don't want to get too technical, but they're data-driven survey questions that are based on getting the right response so that you can evaluate it properly. So certainly the community could have we want to hear about how the officer's demeanor was. We could hear about those sort of things, but the questions are formed in a manner that gets you the right survey results, for lack of a better explanation. But I'm sure the chief and I'm sure the common council, you've approved our budgets for those satisfaction surveys when they occurred. That is something that you just don't do once, right? You do those regularly, which is why we did a second one. I'm sure in the course of the next several years, we'll be doing another one. And that is definitely something that we can talk to whoever does the survey instrument to get community buy-in. But the surveys, I don't want to leave you with the impression that we can change the questions now, because those are done. We just need the final reports.
And I think Councilwoman President Hudson was actually wanting or suggested that we go away from the Finn Institute to open this back up to other organizations.
I think that's a good suggestion. Okay, Jim, thank you, Chief. Jim, continue.
Ronette had a question, and why don't, Ronette, if you're still on, you can just ask it instead of me reading your words.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Raynette, Raynette Relaford, the administrator for the Citizens Review Board. I've noticed this year and in years past, the department consistently advises how much more training the department does than is required. And so the question is, what, if any particular reason the department uses to decide which areas they want to focus more attention on?
There could be trends going on. There could be patterns of discipline. There could be some sort of new technology or new method that's been determined. It could be something that is driven by a new state law that's been passed or practice of something put in place. There are a number of different avenues that could determine what we add into our training regimen.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
And the next question was how often?
Ray.
Sorry. Yes.
You only get one.
Okay, that one's a good one. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, Kevin Rigney had another question on here that I just saw, but if he only gets one, I guess he already spoke.
We can circle back to those that have more than one question, but allow others to.
Peter
question. Mm-hmm.
Peter McCarthy wanted to speak as well. So Peter, if you're still on, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, this is Peter McCarthy. I'm the Citizen Review Board Chair. My question is, as I looked at the topics for both the academy and the in-service training, I didn't see this, but I want to know if it exists. How much emphasis is given to conflict resolution, nonviolent conflict resolution, or de-escalation, or issues like that, both in the academy and in the ongoing in-service?
There are a number of different avenues where de-escalation, conflict resolution, all of those things are part of problem solving. All of those are things of trying to use the minimal level of force that's needed or required. And that's done in a multiple different avenues of our training. The issue is that there are things that are taught from a de-escalation standpoint that may not say de-escalation, but it was actually used in it. For example, you may see firearms listed as the training. Well, doing any firearms training, you're going to have something to where you may give a command to someone to do something or give them instructions on something that you're doing all the time while you have a taser or a weapon drawn on them, but the actual title says taser training or it says firearm training. But de-escalation is woven throughout many aspects of our training because it's one of the pillar things of what we do that lessens or at least mitigates the number of times that an officer is potentially exposed to danger, and so too for the public.
Thank you.
Jim?
Just the second questions of Renette as well as Kevin Rigney.
That's it?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Kevin, why don't you go ahead first?
Is it Kevin or Karen?
Oh, my fault. It's very small on my computer.
Okay.
Karen Rigney.
All right, Karen.
Hi, this is Karen Rigney. I was asking about the original list that Lieutenant Schulte was showing us. And I was just wondering, with all the different areas of training that you do, have there been any that you find that are consistently difficult for the officers to do well? And if so, how are those addressed?
I wouldn't say there's any particular areas that officers are consistently doing incorrectly. If we do have a recruit that is having any type of difficulty in their trainings or they're struggling with something, we definitely provide them with remedial training so that they better understand the topics and they better grasp the concepts that we're going over. Does that answer your question?
So does that mean that these are more or less evaluated throughout everybody's training, and if it is up to the mentor officer, I'm sorry if I have the wrong terminology, to report whether someone needs remediation?
Yes, I think that's part of the first question I got that I didn't quite understand. Throughout the academy, they're tested in each block of instruction, whether it be a written test or in reality-based training. They're tested on the way that they react in certain situations, or firearms. Obviously, they have a qualification standard they need to meet, and same thing with emergency vehicle operations and defensive tactics. So if they're not meeting the standards that we set forth, then that's when they would be sent to remedial training and get them up to speed on what we're doing.
Thank you so much.
Karen, it's nice that we got such interest from the WIT. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm on the police commission there, so I thought this might be interesting to learn from you.
Well, maybe I'll go out and ask the DeWitt Police Department some questions at some point.
We would welcome you to. Cooperation is a great thing.
Thank you, Karen. Jim, continue.
Still, there's nothing new. So if you want to go back to Renette Relaford.
Yep, go ahead. We still got a few more minutes here. Ray?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. My question had to do with how often are you checking to determine the retention from the academy to the street for particular officers?
How often are we checking retention from the academy to the street? Well, I mean, I would say daily. I mean, there are supervisors that are out. Incidents to which, for example, a use of force. There's an immediate investigation of that. There are policies and procedures that we have in place to address anyone that, I guess, that falls outside of what we expect of officers in given circumstances. There are daily roll calls that we have for the uniform patrol, giving instructions to what the officers are supposed to do. We're a paramilitary organization, so supervision, management, commanders is a part of what we do, and we're all being constantly evaluated on our performance.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, Chief. I have a follow-up question here. Does any pattern of complaints against an officer trigger any review for training?
I don't know if I can tell you whether there's a true nexus as of yet. I will tell you that the #1 complaint against police is demeanor. So I don't know if you could say that some part of that could be addressed in a cultural competency, or if that's even the issue in that demeanor. But to your question, I can't point to a specific thing to say this pattern has resulted in this block of instruction in service. For example, with demeanor being our #1 complaint, you'll probably see something on our 2021 that specifically deals with customer service or specifically deals with interpersonal skills or something like that. But that's something that we certainly, as we evolve into the organization that we would want to be, that there should be a true nexus of challenges, problems, and then what is our reaction and mitigation of that. So you will be seeing some of those things in the future.
Counselor, if I can ask one more question.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Chief, along those lines, I had Mr. Conroy of our office put together a list of settlements. I sent it to all of my colleagues on the council, and it's been about $8 million over the last 10 years the city's had to pay out regarding, lawsuits involving police officers. Is there any way, and this is sort of, I know there's union issues and a few other things, but if, along with Councilor Majuk's question, is there any way where there's an officer that perhaps has been involved in too many things that might result in a physical confrontation, or it might result in a lawsuit against the city, or something that would be a really bad incident. And the police hierarchy understands that. Is there any way you would be able to take that officer off the street and like put him in the records division for the rest of his career or anything like that?
To say that there are probably examples of where officers have exhibited something or shown something on the street, and they may have a modified duty, some of which may be a discipline or something may be dealing with a personal issue or something that they have. So to say, has it ever happened? Yes. Generally, we like to deal with the behavior to make sure that we can get the officer to be in alignment with our expectations. But certainly, I think that's happened in every organization to where you've given a modified duty, especially in examples to where you think just a change in duties and responsibilities could potentially help that officer. The caveat of that is I don't want to set a precedent of trying to find a place for bruised or bad apples. In some cases, we have to deal with the behavior, and if they don't respond to that, then we have to separate from employment.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, councilors, any last question here? Well, Chief, we are at 1 hour mark. We don't want to keep you here any longer. You got things to do. We just want to appreciate you for coming with all your team to come and talk to us about this matter. So thank you so much for all you do, and we'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And certainly appreciate the citizens being on here today with our questions.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
you, Jim.